This is a topic that I'm very excited about, and it's also a topic that is very, very brand new. We're all trying to figure it out. I think there is both a lot of promise, but there's also a good deal of value here. So I categorize Copilot for Power BI as both something that's coming that we should be preparing for, as well as something that has kind of started to arrive. 6 months ago, 12 months ago, no, we were playing with it. It was more work to use Copilot with Power BI than it was to go, just use Power BI. But I think that the product team have made a lot of progress very, very quickly, but there's still work to do, as is the case with everything in the AI world. Some things moving faster than others. But again, I'm Paul Turley, director with 3Cloud Cognizant. I also have my own consulting company. I was independent before I came to work for Pragmatic Works, acquired by 3Cloud, and I still do some consulting work on the side. So it's 3Cloud Cognizant primarily works with very large enterprise customers that try to keep my skills sharp by doing some side work and some training and conference presentations and things. And you're welcome to reach out to me. There's my blog address on this intro page, SQL Server BI.blog. And then I'm pretty easy to find in LinkedIn, so I didn't really put that on the slide. But you're welcome to link with me as long as you're not selling anything. I'll accept your LinkedIn invitation. So, preparing for Copilot. This presentation is going to primarily focus on optimizing semantic models to enable end user Copilot experiences. There are so many different ways that Copilot is integrated with Microsoft products. There are a boatload of ways that you can use Copilot with Power BI to design queries, design semantic models, to design all of the stuff in Fabric that might support your models and reports. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about utilizing Copilot both within Power BI Desktop and within the Power BI service as the chat with your data experience, and how we as developers and BI practitioners can support our users in that effort. So I will do some light demos actually using Copilot so we can see how some of these things work, but this is primarily around optimizing your models for Copilot. So we'll talk about designing and preparing semantic models. A lot of things haven't changed in terms of best practices around semantic models, but it's more important than ever before that we follow best practices. And then we'll talk about specific AI preparation, verified answers, Copilot and AI instructions, and then we'll talk about using Fabric data agents to ground Copilot and provide a better.
Paul, you're on mute.
Have I been on mute the whole time?
No, just last 2 seconds.
Interesting. Okay, so I pressed the enter key and I went on mute. That's weird. The good news is that the Copilot for the Power BI home experience is valuable. I took a poll of our kind of most expert BI practitioners within our data and AI practice earlier today, and just said, hey, just checking in. How much interest are we seeing from clients, and where are we delivering this experience? And of the hundreds of projects that we do, and we've got 120-ish projects in flight with Fabric, I counted 3 where they're actively utilizing Copilot or utilizing agents directly against semantic models. So this is just starting to happen in the industry. We have a lot of clients who are asking, who are showing interest, but it's at the point now where it's useful and it's moving in the direction where it, I believe, is going to become very mainstream. So smart, useful, improving. Business users can simply chat with Copilot, get answers to questions, and have a conversation with your data as opposed to just using Power BI in the traditional way to visualize data. Another piece of good news is that Copilot is available in any Fabric capacity. So a little over a year ago, they announced that rather than having to have an F64 equivalent to a P1 premium capacity, that you can use any capacity to utilize Copilot. I'll talk about that a little bit, what that really means, and just how feasible that really is. And I have some very good news, and this is for technical professionals. Copilot doesn't just work out of the box. Without expert semantic model design and preparation, Copilot is not going to be a good experience unless your models are dimensional star schemas, unless things are named correctly, if relationships aren't created correctly, if you're not using explicit measures rather than implicit measures. All of the things that we've been preaching for a long time in terms of best practices in Power BI absolutely have to be followed. So business users still need our skills. We still have some job security, and I think that this is going to be emphasized ever more as more and more businesses start to embrace Copilot within Power BI. So job security is a good thing. How long are we going to have that job security? I don't know, but things are looking good for now. So let's talk about enabling Copilot for Power BI. And rather than showing you screenshots, I'm just going to show you. So I'm actually going to start in the Azure portal, and let's just talk about Fabric capacities. Let's see. We have 26 people in the meeting just by either a show of hands or a chat. How many of you are working in Fabric today? Just a yes or a no, or just getting started? Okay, quite a few hands up. And how many of you are actively using Copilot with Power BI today in any form? Okay, few of you. So step number one, you have to have a capacity. Now, when Copilot was initially introduced, the requirement was an F64 capacity. Retail cost for that with an annual reserve is about $5,000, roughly equivalent to the old Power BI P1 premium SKU. Without the annual reserve, it's about $8,000 a month for an F64. They've lowered that, and I remember talking to Arun Ulag last year about this, and at the time when the F64 was required, I said, Arun, why? Why do you require people to have the F64 at the time? And his answer was, we want to make sure that people have a good experience using Copilot, and not the bad experience that they're likely going to have if they use a smaller capacity, because they'll run out of tokens and it'll be slow. Well, somebody somewhere changed their mind, and now you can use it. And I've got a pay-as-you-go capacity here, and you can see that it's currently sitting at an F8. Now, this is my own tenant, which means that I have to pay for it, and I get some credits through the MVP program, but it still burns a lot of CUs, and I have to be mindful about managing it. So what I will typically do is I will typically set this at an F2, or even pause it if I'm, on vacation or I'm not going to be using it for a while. I don't have a whole lot of background processes, so it doesn't really burn a lot of CUs. But for a demo like this, I'm going to crank it up to an F8. I will tell you that earlier today, before I switched it from F2 to F8, I spent about a half hour, 45 minutes practicing up some demos. and I got a warning that said, hey, you're running out of capacity units. You're not going to have a good experience. So that's one user utilizing Copilot in an F2 starting to run out of tokens. So yeah, you can use it with an F2, but it's not going to last long. How do you estimate? How do you know what you're going to need? Tough to guess. I would start somewhere in this range. I would also start with a small focused group of users. So let me switch over to Power BI. Let's go out to the admin portal, and I'm just going to search for Copilot. And I know that I'm on a high resolution monitor here, so let me just turn the zoom level up a little bit. And if you go down in this section of your tenant settings, you can see that we have to turn on Copilot, and we do that using this settings right here. Now, this is my own tenant. I don't have other users, so I'm not concerned about letting everybody in my organization have access to Copilot. If you work for a company with several hundred users, it would be a good idea to create an intergroup if you don't already have one that meets the purpose, and put a small number of users in that test group. Turn that on for a specific security group and use that test set of users. Teach them to use Copilot, coach them through doing some standard exercises, and then see what your capacity usage looks like. Use the capacity metrics app. You could use the FUAM if you're in a large organization, but see what that impact is. We don't have enough experience yet, and don't really have the tooling yet to be able to accurately predict how much compute Copilot is going to use. But it's going to use resources in one of two ways. One, it's going to use OpenAI tokens. That's different from Fabric. And then it's also going to generate DAX queries, and then that interaction within Fabric will burn capacity units within the Fabric service. So that's where you turn it on. There is a caveat here, and that is that in areas where not all of the open AI services are currently supported, in some smaller in some smaller Azure data centers, in order to use Copilot, it will have to go out of region. Now, I'm not aware of any of the data centers within the US where that's a concern, but in certain parts of Europe, compliance standards require that you stay within your region. And where is this? Right here. Data sent to Azure OpenAI can be stored outside your capacity's geographic region. If you're a multinational organization, if you are using Fabric outside of the US, look into this and see if that's going to be a requirement for you. I don't have enough experience with it to know what that impact will be, but I know it's a concern that's been raised in certain places in Europe. Okay, let's leave that rabbit hole and go back to my workspace. Back to my slides here. Okay, so Power BI Copilot integrations. For development within desktop, there are a bunch of different ways that Copilot can be used within Power Query to generate DAX. Within Fabric, there are a number of Copilot integrations to create data flows Gen 2, again, Power Query, pipelines, notebooks. We're going to see more and more integrations for Copilot to support the development experience. And of course, in your development tools within VS Code, within Visual Studio, within GitHub. That's not what we're talking about today, but just you have to be really clear as you're talking about using Copilot, because it exists in a lot of different places. So we're going to talk about two different experiences. One is the web report designer and Power BI desktop. We'll group those together. And within the Fabric portal homepage, also referred to as chat with your data. So one of the first things to realize this Copilot, like other agentic AI tools, has growing up to do. It is an intelligent entity. It's artificial, but it's designed, it's created to mimic human behavior. And as such, it is in its infancy in many ways. It has to be trained. It needs guidance. It needs grounding. It needs guardrails. It learns through repetition. And when we talk about learning, within a session, within the context of that session, it will learn, and it can do so with the help of instructions. But the platform itself also learns. And so it will learn from your data, but it will also mature just based on the large language models that Copilot uses behind the scenes. It's going to figure things out. It'll grow up, but it will also make mistakes. This is a very different experience from a lot of the technical tools that I've been using throughout my career. Move to the next slide here. And this kind of takes us to the fact that AI generally is non-deterministic. What that means is that if I'm using SQL Server and I'm writing a T-SQL query against tables whose schemas haven't changed, against data that hasn't changed, if I run a query 100 times, I'm going to get exactly the same answer. If I ask Copilot a prompt, if I give Copilot a prompt or ask a question 10 different times, I may not get the same answer each time. Now, if I'm asking the question in the right way and that data's been prepared, it should give me the right answer, but it might give me a different behavior. And that's non-deterministic behavior. There are a lot of variables in the environment, and there is just the learning nature and the evolving nature of AI. So it's important for your users to understand and be able to kind of embrace and work within this non-deterministic behavior that is AI. And that's much like chatting with Grok or Claude or ChatGPT as we're becoming used to interacting with AI agents. Is the cat going to scratch the child? Well, eventually it might, but it kind of depends on the mood of the cat. Kind of depends on the mood of the AI agent. So, what are we going to talk about? We'll start with basic dimensional modeling. That's important. That's the first thing that we need to do. Now, you can't always in business model your data in a perfect star schema. However, those of us who work with Power BI a lot know that when a challenged Power BI model designer comes to us with a really horrible model with all kinds of bidirectional relationships and fragmented tables and things like that, 9 times out of 10 you can pound that data into a dimensional shape. So that really becomes priority number one, is to dimensionalize your data, get your facts into fact tables, try to denormalize your data into dimension tables, have single relationships between those tables wherever possible, and then you can fractalize the model as necessary and create some of those exceptions. But dimensional modeling really is key. Get it into a star or at least a snowflake as much as possible. Do extensive housekeeping. So naming things correctly, getting rid of columns that you don't need, deduplicating, err on the side of simplicity, err on the side of getting rid of columns, getting rid of fields that you don't need. You can always add them back, but every single column that exists in a table should be there to support a specific reporting requirement. Filter by, group by, aggregate by. Get rid of everything else. Use friendly business names. We'll talk a little bit about synonyms. Heck, we're not going to talk about synonyms. The Q&A feature, by the way, is going to go away eventually and be replaced by Copilot. So synonyms are helpful, but Copilot is largely kind of replacing what synonyms have done for us in the past. Then we'll talk about verified answers, endorsements, and then we'll talk about using the data agent with instructions. So without Copilot, it's really up to the user to say, oh, I know that I need to go use this report in this workspace, or I've got to select this semantic model to build a report or to be able to browse against that. With Copilot, Copilot can make that decision for us. So user still has the option of saying, well, I think that the data that I need is in this semantic model, so I can direct my prompt to that semantic model or report. But we can also just broadcast a question, and Copilot has the ability to go, no, it's over here in this model, or it's in this other data source. All right, so I'm going to jump out to some demos here. So just some of the basics of Power BI design are more important than ever before. Dimensional model design, understanding filter propagation, use explicit measures. Copilot, for the most part, is not going to be really good at aggregating numeric columns. It wants to use explicitly named measures. So this brings us back to a lot of the basic rules. All right, well, I'll jump off here and we'll come back to this slide. So I'm going to jump over to a I believe this is the one that I want to use. Actually, I believe that I want to use this one instead. Bear with me. I had opened up all of my files, had everything ready, and we had a little bit of a brownout and my computer shut off. I've had to reopen my files. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to come back. And all right, so let's start with a simple prompt. So when I open Power BI Desktop, when I sign on, I'm going to be prompted to connect to my tenant. And if I haven't before, I'll be asked to connect to a workspace that is associated with a capacity with Copilot enabled. I've already done that. And that's why the Copilot icon shows up. If I hadn't done that before, I would be prompted to sign in. I'd be prompted to go to that workspace. The workspace binds me to the capacity that has Copilot available. So if it doesn't show up, you need to go through that exercise. So I'm going to click on Copilot. That opens the Copilot panel. So we're going to start in Power BI Desktop, use Copilot here, and then we'll move over to the Power BI home experience within the web browser. So let me open this up. I'm going to start with a simple prompt, and I am going to cheat and paste because I don't like typing in demos. And so I'm giving Copilot a direction here, and I'm going to say show total purchases from the PO table, the purchase order table by employee. See if since I rebooted, do I have? Yeah, I do have Zoom it running. All right, so let's throw that prompt out there and see what Copilot comes up with. It's pretty simple prompt. Essentially, we're saying by employee. So I'm expecting this to group by employee and come back and show total purchases. All right, well, that does show me a list of employees, but look at the total purchases. So this is an example of where Copilot is essentially doing what I ask it to do. Did what I ask it to do, but my model doesn't support the query. So why would that be? All right, pretty simple example here, right? I don't have a relationship that supports that. And, so I can go fix that within my model just by creating that relationship. It's a pretty simple kind of 100 level example. And if I go back and say, all right, well, do it again. and this is going to do what I ask it to do, but we're also going to discover that there's actually only one employee that has total purchases based on that relationship. But it does highlight the fact that your dimensional model has to support your query, and Copilot otherwise is just going to do exactly what you ask it to do. All right, let's look at some other prompts here. I'm going to ask Copilot to show the top selling product. Okay, so Copilot's pretty smart now. It's going to say top selling product by units sold. So you can see that the Copilot has made it an assumption here, and that is what I mean by top selling product. So it's explaining to me that it interprets that as units sold, and then it's essentially answering the question. All right, and if there are questions, you're welcome to just throw them out to me as I go here. All right. So let's say that, okay, well, great. I've got a response.
Paul,
Yeah.
Paul, we got a question. What do the numbers in the squares represent?
These,
The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s.
so because Copilot inferred and assumed what I meant by top selling. So there isn't a measure called top selling product. So essentially what Copilot is doing is it's saying, all right, well, that could mean a number of different things. So I'm going to give you a number of different options. Essentially what it's saying is I can regenerate this DAX query using highest sold stock name by units sold, total sales. So it just gives you the option of, oh, I'm sorry. It's actually referring to different visuals on the page. Sorry, I didn't know. I thought that was something else. Yeah, so that's pointing to different visuals on that page. So this is generating a DAX query, but because I'm looking at a report page, it has the ability to highlight different visuals on the page. And this is just a navigation to those visuals. Hit Control Z to move that back. All right. All right, let's talk about how we can help Copilot better understand certain questions. So let's say that if I wanted to be able to ask a question that would give me an answer similar to this visual, we can see that that this visual is showing us total units sold by state. And let's say that if I were to ask a question like show unit sales by state, I want to see if we get the same result. Okay, we are not. So we're getting total units sold, and this was, well, it was total units sold. I think there may be, why are we getting different results here? By SP name. don't know if there's a filter on this. I'm not quite sure why I'm saying different numbers here, but let's say that this this is what I deem to be a correct response to a question that a user plans to ask. And let's say that in sitting down with a user, they're saying, "Hey, I'm asking this question, and it's giving me the wrong answer. It's giving me something other than what I was expecting." Oh, what's the question that you're asking? Oh, well, I'm saying, show me unit sales by state, and I'm expecting to see this. So what I'll do is on a visual, I can set up verified answers. And essentially what this means is that this is the answer to the question. You could argue that these are really kind of verified questions. I guess I can't copy and paste that for whatever reason, so I'm just going to have to type it. Show unit sales by state. So verified answers, even though you set them up on a visual, it doesn't actually apply to that visual. The visual is the vehicle to get it into the linguistic model within the semantic model behind this report. So imagine that you have a thin report. The semantic model is published separately in the service, and I've created a list of questions that users might ask, perhaps just by spending some time with the users and saying, "Hey, I'm asking the question this way and I'm not getting the response that I'm looking for." We can enter all of those questions or phrases, and then that's going to go into the linguistic model. It's stored in the semantic model. And regardless of how a user is interacting with this model, they could be using Analyze in Excel, they could be using a completely different report, they could be creating their own report. Against the model, when they ask this question, it's going to give them this answer. You can also ask Copilot to suggest alternate questions. So, what state has the highest unit sales? Which state has the lowest sales? Let's say I don't really like those two because this is showing me all the states. But we'll say, all right, yeah, user might ask the question this way. How are unit sales distributed across states? We might say something like unit sales grouped by state. Let's say that we also have sales in Canada. So we're going to say province, etc. All right, so that's verified answers. And so that's kind of level one, a level one effort for providing grounding rules and assisting Copilot in answering questions a certain way and kind of providing rules around that. Let's jump back to the slides. All right. Now, how do I know how fit a semantic model is? If you've used Tabular Editor, if you're an expert semantic model designer, then you're probably aware of the best practice analyzer that surfaced through Tabular Editor. I believe that the BPA was initially introduced as an add-in for Excel before Tabular Editor was created. But Best Practice Analyzer was a community effort, still is a community effort, where community contributors would define rules. Essentially, a semantic model is scanned, and the rules that describe a best practice are defined using a little JSON document. And contributors can go upload these into a Git repo. It's a public Git repo. And there are well over 100 rules out there today. I think there are actually quite a few more, maybe upwards of 200 rules that are in this public repository, and that's what Tabular Editor uses. Now, a lot of those rules don't apply specifically to Copilot enablement. So the product team essentially took these rules, they chose a subset of them, about 30 of them, and they baked them into a custom compiled Python library, probably a Java library that's called using the SymPy libraries. And it automatically is called from a notebook. So let's take a look at how that works. With a model deployed into the service with a fabric capacity behind it, you can open up that model, the open button over here, and go to the best practice analyzer here. Now, when I click this button, it's going to create a PySpark notebook. It will reference the SymPy library. So you can see that it imports SymPy, sets up a few variables, and then there's really one line. It's just calling this run model BPA. Now, it has a lot of code and a lot of logic behind it, but it's pretty simple from a usability perspective. So we're going to connect that to a Spark session. Run that. That'll run the import, reference the functions in the SymPy library, and then I'll run this. Now, if you have a large model, this could take 10 or 15 minutes or so. This is a very small, simple model. And haven't made a lot of mistakes in this model, so you'll see some suggestions. But if you have a very large model, it's probably going to find a lot of things that it doesn't like. And just because the BPA makes suggestions or it finds things that it flags as being suspicious within your model doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fix all of those things. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to improve Copilot, but this is a good place to start. So you see some simple things here, like, well, you've got some columns that aren't defined as primary keys. Power BI, frankly, doesn't care that much about that particular piece of metadata, but it might improve things for Copilot if you were to open Tabular Editor and then go change that property for these keys. You've got some formatting things and data type things, and again, may not make or break your Copilot experience, but it's a good place to start. This notebook is automatically saved, so you can go back and look at these results later, and you can see that it just tags a number to the end. So any questions about using the best practice analyzer? All right. Let's close that. Close the model. Right. And like I said, there are about 30 rules that it uses, and no, you can't make your own rules. If you want a more extensive analysis, then you can use the tabular editor version. But all right. Just a note about synonyms. The Q&A feature has been part of Power BI for a very long time, and if you recall when Q&A was being promoted within the service, on the home screen, essentially, you could just type a plain English question and it would translate it into a DAX query and then show you something like a simple bar chart. There was kind of marginal value in that experience, and they introduced the Q&A visual. Same thing, you type a question and it produces a visual for you. That eventually will be replaced with Copilot. The Q&A visual can optionally be Copilot enhanced, but if you open up a report in desktop today, and you have the Q&A visual, you're going to get a warning that says, you know what, we've decided to deprecate the Q&A visual because they're going to promote the use of Copilot. So synonyms are still valuable, though. So I'm going to use a model here pretty quick with the FAA's airline performance data. It's one of my favorite demo data sets. And we have an airlines table. And the the name of an airline, the airline name, the airline code, and the airline name. Well, within the industry, airlines can be referred to as carriers. So if I were to say, um, you show me the number of flights by carrier, or show me average departure delay by carrier, if I provide a synonym for airline name as carrier, Copilot doesn't have to work so hard. It just knows that carrier means airline. Now, Copilot is smart enough to go out to the internet or to reach within its LLM and say, well, what are synonyms for airline? When I say carrier and carrier doesn't exist in my semantic model, what do I translate that to? And there's a very good chance that it'll intuitively make that linguistic association on its own. But using synonyms will both speed things up and guarantee that that's what's going to happen. All right. Verified answers we talked about. I showed you a really simple example. We're going to take the concept of verified answers and take that to the next level with AI instructions. So verified answers are the place to start. It's you want to build a set of verified answers for common questions that users might ask, where you've built a report that you can use as an example and say, yeah, this is what the user will, these are the results that I expect Copilot to give when a user asks the question in a variety of different ways. All right, and then AI instructions. So let me jump back to my demo environment. All right, I'm actually going to jump back into desktop first. I'm going to jump over to this example, and I'm using content from a brand new training, a set of training materials that Microsoft have produced, and much like the dashboard in a day, they've created a chat with your data in a day. That's the CWYDIAD. This is brand new. I've already found some pretty blatant goofs in the instructions, so I think it's going to evolve a little bit, but it's a good set of data to play with, and it's readily available. It's pretty easy to find online. So chat with your data in a day, one of the free trainings that partners are encouraged to offer. I'm going to jump over to Copilot here, and let's just walk through a couple of examples. We'll start with what reseller has the highest sales. All right, now, so I said, what reseller has the highest sales? And there's an operative word there, highest. What do we mean by highest? So Copilot is trying to answer my question by saying, okay, based on the available data, how did Copilot arrive at this? How did it interpret highest sales? Well, it looked through all of my measures and it selected a measure called reseller sales. Let's take a look at our measures. All right, so we've got for that. All right, reseller sales. So we've got reseller sales, but we also have a measure down here called sales by reseller. What's the difference between the two? Reseller sales is saying, give me the top one. Okay, so it's returning the sales amount based on the reseller name. All right. And then I've got sales by reseller, and that's doing something completely different. So this is calculating sales in a date range based on the reseller name. Oh, and I'm sorry, we're getting total sales. So that should give me a completely different answer. So I remember what I'm supposed to do with this. If I'm looking for, so if I were to ask the question specifically and say, what reseller has the highest reseller sales? And I need to turn that around. Highest sales by reseller. I'm going to expect to get a different answer than Tailspin Toys in Minidoka, Idaho. And yes, all right. So it's saying, yeah, that's a different reseller. This is the one in Tennessee. So how do I direct it? How do I help Copilot understand what I mean when a user says highest or most or best selling? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an AI instruction. So if we go back to prep data for AI, I can provide an instruction here. So rather than just giving it a phrase or a question, I can give it a very verbose instruction and say, if asked about highest or most or best selling product, first clarify that the user wants the product by units sold or product by total sales value. All right. So essentially what I'm saying is don't just guess. All right. Now, I have discovered that when you add a an instruction that sometimes you have to close the Copilot window and open it back up again. I'm going to try this, but if it doesn't give me the response I'm looking for, I'll close it, try it again. All right, so let's ask a question. What's our best selling product? So I'm expecting Copilot to ask me a question now rather than just giving me an answer. Okay, so and they're constantly changing this. They're constantly getting feedback and improving it. So in the previous version, we would get essentially it would say, I can't answer your question. Did you mean this? And you click on it, or did you mean that? In this case, what it's doing is it's saying, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and give you my best guess, but I'm also going to give you an optional answer here. So the best-selling product by total sales value is this one. But if you're more interested in best-selling product by units sold, then it also gives me that answer as well. So it's giving me two different answers rather than just guessing and giving me one. Let's see. I can also tell it not to guess. Go back and add another instruction and say, all right, if you don't understand what I've asked, then don't guess. Instead, ask for clarification. So again, I'm hopeful that this will apply that instruction without closing and refreshing. So let me try this one more time. This time I'll ask the question a little bit differently and say, what is our highest selling product? Okay, let me close and reopen Copilot just to make sure I'm getting the response that I'm expecting. This is our highest selling product. So I don't think that it's refreshing the cache, and might have to close the model, then reopen it. What I'm expecting, and what I would expect if we were to close the session and start it over again with that instruction, is that it just wouldn't give me an answer at all. It would just say, hey, there could be a variety of different answers, so you're going to have to clarify. All right, let's see. Do we have questions? Looks like it's cited. Oh, thank you, Mark. All right, let me give you one more example of an AI instruction. So let's say that I anticipate users using terminology like best selling or highest selling, even though that doesn't correspond to specific measure names or other metadata within our model. Rather than going and creating measures with alternate names, I can go in and just add instructions and provide that translation. I just need to remind myself to zoom in here since I'm on a high resolution screen. So I'm just going to say, hey, when I say best selling, I mean most units sold, which is a measure name. And when I say highest selling, I mean this. You can provide a comma separated list. AI instructions can be very verbose. You can dump an entire document in here, a multi-page document. We have agent implementations that we've deployed for clients where we have 5-6 pages of instructions, and that seems to work quite well. All right, I'm not going to demonstrate that. I think we can anticipate what to expect here. All right, well, let's graduate from instructions within Power BI desktop to the home experience. So I'm going to go out to either the home page or to Copilot, which these used to be significantly different. It used to be that you just go home and then you had access to Copilot. I don't know why I'm getting the little fabric thing there. There we go. Now it's kind of roughly the same experience, and I don't know if they're just going to merge this into home. Really, the only difference is that on home you get your most recent list, and then Copilot, it's kind of the same thing. Either way. But let's just say that I'm a user. I've opened up my browser to my home page, and I'm just going to ask a question. I have access to multiple models and reports in multiple workspaces, and as a user, I'm not going to go navigate to a workspace and select a report or select a semantic model. I'm just going to go ask a question. So let's just say, well, first of all, go help me find a report. Don't even query the report. Just tell me what reports are available, And again, this is from that training material. Find reports about Fabricam sales trend for the past year. So go show me all the reports that have anything to do with Fabricam sales. So this is going to scan by tenant. It's going to look at all of the reports and models that are available that mention Fabricam sales, and it's telling me that I have uh, uh, a report. I've got two different copies of this report in different workspaces. Unfortunately, I don't see a way to figure out which workspace these reports are in. Uh, yeah, the description doesn't really tell me either. So anyway, I've got a couple of reports out there that I could then navigate to. Let's tell it to answer a question right at the prompt from a report or a model that it finds. So give me an overview of, and I can number these. I can say from the first Fabricam company sales report. So it knows now to go to this report. Not quite sure what just happened there. Let's try that one more time. Give me an overview of the report. There we go. All right. So it just hit that report. It's going to go through, at least in this relatively small report, it's going to give me a summary of all of the visuals in all of the pages. It's going to do that in summary form. If we had 20 pages with 10 visuals each, then it's going to do its best to prioritize those. But I don't have to go to the report. And I can either go view the report or I can explore that and then run DAX queries against this visual and use that as the basis to get to my semantic model. All right. I'm gonna.
Paul, we got a quick question. Do you know
Yeah,
if the trial capacity has any limitations on Copilot for Power BI?
I don't think you can use a trial capacity.
Okay.
Don't think you can use a trial capacity. I'm squinting a little bit because I'm not entirely sure that I'm right about that, but I don't think you can use a trial. If anyone knows differently, please feel free to correct me. I'm thinking that you can. All right. So I'm gonna switch context here. I ask a question, but I didn't tell it what model or report to use. I'm gonna ask a different kind of question. And I do have a model out here that has, well, you can guess what kind of data this would be. When I say confirmed cases, that might be a bit of a painful throwback for us back to an earlier period. But confirmed cases, it went and found that I have a COVID-19 model that in the state of Nevada COVID-19 dashboard report and model. But it's essentially saying, is this what you wanted? I think this is what you're looking for. But let's go ask a more specific question and see if it can actually answer it without me explicitly selecting that model. All right, so This answer is generated from data that hasn't been approved for Copilot use by anyone in your organization. So this is a data governance thing. So it's not going to immediately show us an answer. It's going to say, hey, here's a disclaimer. This data may not be trustworthy. And then if I click view answer, I am going to, it's going to take me to that report. And it's making some assumptions. I believe that I believe that there were actually deaths in Carson City, but it didn't understand the question well enough. But I can go to the report and explore it. All right, let's talk about this question, this statement right here. The answer was generated from data that hasn't been approved for Copilot. So if we take a look at, go back to this workspace. So for demonstration purposes, I deployed 2 copies of this report in Semantic Model, my airline performance. One of them I went through and prepped. Essentially what I did is I ran the best practice analyzer, and then I went and applied all of the suggestions, and then I republished it as prepped. Also did just a little more cleanup work. So if I've decided that this model is ready for prime time, there are a couple things that I want to do. One, as an organization, we need to establish a data governance criteria to say, this is the criteria for approval. It's gone through these checks, and we've decided that this model and this report should be approved for Copilot. We believe that it's ready. We're also going to certify it. Now, certification and endorsement is different than approved for Copilot, but categorically, we're going to say, yeah, we trust this data. So I'm going to go to settings. And again, 2 different things, but I'm going to treat them as essentially an approval gate. I'm going to say this is approved for Copilot. Back in the tenant settings in the admin portal, there was an option to only return content that was approved for Copilot. So you can use this to turn off all of the noise and to only allow your users to use models and reports that have been approved for Copilot. All right. Also, you can endorse your models. Endorsements have been around for a long time. The idea behind certified is that it's gone through our governance process. We've decided that it's completely ready. It's tested. It's verified. Data stewards say, yep, thumbs up. All of that data is good. It conforms to all of our rules. We're going to certify that for use. Promoted means within this business unit, this analyst we believe is pretty trustworthy. And within that business unit, within their workspace, they've said, yeah, we think this model is valuable. It hasn't really gone through the rigor of certification, but we're going to promote it as use. So it gets a B grade as opposed to an A grade. And certified reports and models are going to show up first. They're going to be the first thing that you see in the One Lake Hub. It's going to be the first set of results that Copilot considers, then it's going to consider promoted. All right, so that's what determines this. All right, I'm going to say, okay, Copilot, only use that report to answer my questions. So let's back and ask this question again. How many confirmed cases have there been? Okay, so it breaks it down. I was going to ask it to break it down by county, but it already did that for me. It assumed that I wanted to do that. And we'll go back and ask this question again, see if we get it a different answer. Okay, so that was the right answer. All right, I'm going to switch over to my last topic, and that is data agents. So how are Fabric data agents used with Copilot for Power BI? A couple of different ways. One, an agent is kind of the switchboard operator that will ground and direct Copilot to a set of semantic models or additional data sources. So let me start with directing it to semantic models. When you create a data agent, let's just go back to here. You just add an agent to a workspace in any Fabric enabled workspace, and you choose data. Now, data can be a variety of different things. It could be another agent. You can have agents layered on top of other agents. It could be an API. It can be a web service. There are a variety of different things that you can connect to that can make this a very sophisticated experience. And you can also connect to a variety of Fabric data sources. So Lakehouse's KQL databases, warehouses. I'm connected to a SQL database in Fabric. Now, let's put that aside for now and just say, all right, when this agent is used, let's say that I have, making up an example, I have retail sales and wholesale sales, and I have an agent that is focused entirely on retail sales. So I'm going to eliminate those tables that are irrelevant, perhaps only including the fact table for retail sales. And then I'm going to provide specific instructions and grounding specifically for that business purpose. And so when users utilize this agent, it's going to ground their prompts, and so they only receive responses that are relevant to their business. So I don't have to create a specific semantic model for them. I can use a larger model, maybe even multiple models that are specifically grounded for the business area. Now, additionally, and this is a common scenario. I've got a set of data that I don't have time. I'm not going to go through the rigor of creating a semantic model. How could I use Copilot for Power BI, essentially the Power BI chat experience, to query data that has not been modeled, is not in a semantic model? Well, this is such a case. So I went to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, where I get the airline performance data, and I also downloaded the bird strike database. What's the bird strike database? Whenever a pilot is aware that their aircraft strikes an animal of any kind, it could be a bat or a bee or an alligator or a deer or a goose, they are required by law to fill out what's called a bird strike report. Now, if I go to the BTS site and I download the bird strike data, I get this Excel spreadsheet. It's really, really ugly. It has about 100 columns. It's not curated. The quality is horrible. And I just get this one big, massive spreadsheet. They don't break it down by tables. It's not dimensional data. It would take a lot of curation. And although we believe in modeling our data correctly, we believe in doing it the right way, sometimes you just need to get her done. And so I'm going to say that for our purposes, this agent can consume data from this certified airline performance semantic model, but only 3 tables. And it can also direct traffic to the bird strike table in this SQL database for Fabric. I'm going to provide an instruction here that says questions related to animal encounters, animal strikes, bird strikes, or damage. When those keywords are used, those should be directed to this data source and the bird strikes table. And again, you could provide even more verbose instructions than that. Questions related to these other things, airline performance, delays, distance, yada, yada, should be directed to this model. All right, so let's try it. So we'll go back out. Oops. Let me just come out here and go to Copilot. All right. So I'm gonna select. Actually, you know what? Let's just do an open-ended question. So how many geese were struck in, let's see, between 2020 and 2023? Now, I don't know if it's going to be smart enough to figure this out, but it's going to scan my tenant, and of course, that data agent is out there. I also have a report based on this data, so it may find that instead. Let's just give this a shot. Okay, so it's saying, all right, well, you haven't approved anything, but it found the semantic model. All right. So rather than using that semantic model, which will answer the question, let me direct it to my agent, and let's ask the question again. Now, I could just say, try again or answer the question again. I'm just going to copy and paste it. Okay, 312 bird strike incidents involving geese. So it's smart enough. And I don't know if the species is geese or goose. It may have done a linguistic translation in there, but at least that works. So we are running short on time, so I'll go ahead and wrap this up. But let's say so I want to know what cities have the most strikes with geese. Anybody want to guess? Show results for
New
the
York.
New York. Actually, I think that's what brought down the U.S. Air, the Sully's plane, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Or the top 5 cities. Actually, you'll be surprised what the answer is. Anyone want to guess again? In California.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Oh, data not returned. Oh, so this is interesting because I've asked this question before and it's actually worked.
Ask again in a more stern voice.
let's say airport city. So I may have asked the question in a slightly different way, but it definitely will. City level details not recorded. That's not true. By airport? Now I'm just guessing. There, Sacramento. Yeah, so it's Sacramento, then Chicago. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. I hope that this has been helpful. This is a journey. Agents really are the next step. They're very, very easy to use within Fabric, and really kind of that's the switchboard operator. That's the I need to aggregate data from multiple sources, or I need to kind of focus things and ground things with those AI instructions, and the agent is the way to get there. Next level within Fabric are ontologies, which also use agents, but they use the graph database behind the scenes. But categorically, it really is kind of the same behavior. But with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up and just thank you for your time. You're welcome to reach out to me through LinkedIn and follow me on my blog.